This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from Lilypub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelkastens. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelkastens have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Book.
Let's do it again.
All right.
Episode 23. Zettelkasten. You've heard the name. What is it?
Hello, and welcome to the Zettelcast, where the five of us get together and talk about our Zettelkastens, our plus ones, and chit-chat about things, all things Zettelkasten, and sometimes we talk about a story we're writing together called the Roanoke Project. Well, today, I'm Kathleen Spracklin. I'm your host today, and today's episode is in a response to some questions that I've been given in another forum where someone was saying, well, I'm new to this stuff. What is a Zettelkasten anyway? And so I did a podcast yesterday evening on my take. And I also am throwing it open to the group here because we probably all have slightly different ideas about what exactly is a Zettelkasten. A Zettelkasten is what you make of it ultimately, so you will have to answer that question for yourself. But let's see what the others have to say about it. Who would like to lead us off?
It's a zero draft visual. That's what it is. Okay. Well, there she blows. And I do recognize that the AZaK convo roundtable might feel disproportionately large, but I don't think so. because it's all of the main cards, and you see that these little entities have drawers in the back of their heads.
I love it.
That's where the main cards go. Okay. And they're sitting around talking about the ideas that are main card content, right? And this is supposed to be a flow that shows we have the round table, and then it flows, and there are the categories, and we have the bib cards. Can you see my mouse pointer?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So the categories, and then we have the bib cards in the drawers, and the projects also in the drawers, because you can do it in like either way, right? And these go around and around. And the content of the file cabinets, the drawers, go back and forth between the AZaker with this nice smile on her face, or his face. And can you see that he's got roller skates? And a bunch of new cards, along with the reading and learning plan that's being, actualized by this all this activity. So this goes back and forth between the AZaK and their boxes, and then it goes around and go back to the round table, and around and around and around it goes. So that's
I love it.
That's
okay.
And so and the text part of it, to maintain an AZaK, is to embrace the opportunity to see and hear yourself think in a way that preserves access to that thinking to your future self and for your progeny. And I refer people to the listicle from the 10th, that 50 item listicle that lists all the benefits of having an AZaK. Okay, so that's my number one. Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah, we'll be doing a link in this show to episode 21, because here we're really kind of answering the what, And I think in episode 21, it was more about the why.
Mhm.
We're answering that. Say that again, Julianne.
The question in episode 21 was more about the benefits, the why of a
The why.
Zettelkasten, whereas here we're really digging into what is it?
Yeah, it's an
One and more.
opportunity to hear yourself and see yourself think.
Yeah.
That's my take, right?
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful, wonderful gift you can give to yourself and give to your children, actually, you know. So there we go.
Love it.
Okay.
All right. So I took a look at this question, and because I have medieval philosophy on the brain, I analyzed it according to principles of the Lillian art. So what is a Zettelkasten depends on what level you are considering it at. If you're talking about just the physical level, nothing conceptual, well, it's just a box of note cards with writing on them. That's all. If all you can understand is the physical, that's all that it is. But of course, it's more than that. So a description of a conceptual, let's see, definition, you could call it a system of connecting ideas. That gives you a little bit more information, but still, why do you want a system of connecting ideas? And that's where you get into the relationship that you as the user have with your Zettelkasten. And so I came up with 4 things that immediately came to mind. There's, I'm sure, more depending on, you know, who's talking and whose Zettelkasten they're talking about. But for me, the relationship is it's a communication partner. I got that phrase from Nicholas Luhmann, of course. It's a second mind. It's a memory extension, and it's an insight generator. Those links that I mentioned in the earlier definition, that what they do when I interact with them is they generate insights. So the greatest value in defining the Zettelkasten comes when you're thinking about the more abstract conceptual ideas and how you relate to it. That is where the magic comes in, is how you relate to it. So that's what I got.
All right. Thank you, Mel.
Well, I could go. So what is a Zettelkasten? I'm just reading. I haven't. As I read this, I'm going to find all sorts of ways to make it briefer, but here we go. A way of taking notes and storing them that allows quick access to their essence, discovery of their relationship with other ideas, and connection to the original sources. Intrinsic to this way of taking and storing notes is the use of one's hands while doing it. This physical engagement involves more of the brain than note-taking methods that require less hand involvement, such as typing and clicking. The time that it takes to perform the manual tasks, which are not difficult and do not necessarily demand much cognitively, allow for the mind to reflect on the ideas themselves. This creates opportunities for recognizing connections. If the ideas are themselves valuable to you, the connections that you discover among them can feel profound.
Yeah. Are you ready,
I can
Victoria?
go. Yeah, mine's short and sweet. And I don't know. I kind of defer back to ad copy for some reason. I don't know why, but mine's basically a twofold answer. It's an analog note card-based memory tool that serves as a storehouse for both research and generating ideas. And it's also a productivity partner that harnesses thinking and writing by hand in order to write towards one's larger goals, whatever those might be.
Wow, excellent. Thank you. Well, I have a definition. Of course, I rattled on about it for 10 minutes last night, so I won't repeat that. Instead, I'll share something that came to me this morning that kind of summarizes all of that. So I wrote, a Zettelkasten is a thought process that leaves behind file cards that are so valuable for future thought processes that they are worth carefully preserving.
Ooh,
Nice.
love it.
Oh, thank you all for contributing to that first question. And now I'm going to go a little bit deeper with each of you. And I did not cover this second question in my podcast. It brings us more to us with our plus ones. And that is the question of, now that we've formed a relationship with our Zettelkasten, how has that relationship changed you? Or has it?
Ooh. I can answer
You're
that
on
one
mute,
easily.
Deb.
Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah,
There you
changed.
are.
Yeah, it changed me. And it's still changing me. In that I was always, scribbling down notes, but it could have been on a little piece of paper or a sticky or an index card if I happen to have one, or in a notebook somewhere. And so it was all over the place. And the thought of retrieval never even, it may have come to mind, but it never came to be, I would run across things accidentally, maybe, but nothing was organized. So this is an opportunity to organize things, and an opportunity to know that you can find something that you thought before, and the opportunity to run into something that you completely forgotten about that is really important, for whatever you might be doing at a given time. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful to Lumen. I'm grateful to Scott Shepard. I'm grateful to you, Kathleen. I'm grateful to this whole thing that has happened, this phenomenon that's called Lily Pub and that's called the Tribe. It's a marvelous, marvelous, marvelous thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would echo that. For me, it has become a profound part of the way that I live my life. I mean, when I first discovered it, I was stuck on a novel that I'd been trying to write since 1996. And I am absolutely convinced I could not have finished that book, certainly not in the time that it took me, which was, I think, a year and a half, maybe a little less than that. I could not have done it without the Zettelkasten system. I just couldn't, because there were too many parts spread across too much time and too many places. I couldn't, maybe this is just mom brain when you reach a certain age, but I couldn't hold it all in my head anymore. When I was writing then, I could hold it all in my head, the whole world, and see it and be able to write it. And I couldn't do that anymore. And I couldn't find a way through. Retrofitting this system for what I needed it to do allowed me to do that. And finishing that book, so it literally changed the course of my life, because I'm going in a completely different direction now. I'm going in the direction that I wanted to go when I was 20 years old, thinking I'm going to graduate college and become a writer, and just wasn't able to make it happen. And now I've almost finished my second book, which is about how to do what I did and be able to bring more people into the process, hopefully in what is a very meaningful way, because it has been one of the most meaningful changes in my life. And I don't say that lightly, it really has.
Well, for me, I always have a picture in my head of sort of an ideal Zettelkasten, all the things that I would like to put into it. Of course, there's the reality of how much I actually do put into it. But what I've found is that just the act of trying to reach that ideal is very stimulating. It stimulates more thinking, it stimulates more creativity, more writing. So even imperfectly doing a Zettelkasten, and of course, honestly, everything is going to be imperfect, right? Because we're human. But even just trying and doing a little bit makes more happen. And it, like Victoria, it has completely changed my life. I've had the idea of wanting to write about interesting topics for years and years and years, and it was just in my head. When your ideas are just in your head, they don't really do anything. At best, you remember them. At worst, you forget them. Either way, they're just sitting there. But when you put things into a Zettelkasten, now you're communicating with yourself, but in writing. So that's something. There's a chance for the ideas to bounce off of each other and to create new ideas. And that it's like a catalyst, because once you've written to your Zettelkasten and come up with more ideas, then it makes it easier to write to actual people. And then when the actual people read your ideas, then there's even more interplay, and then it's just a runaway explosion. It's amazing. So I think that just that act of writing down ideas for this Zettelkasten leads to writing down the ideas in a longer form for other people. It just flows right out of it.
I totally agree. I think I would have to add that in very much the way that Scott said that it should and that it does, one of the things that it helps you find and develop is your writer's voice. We all have one, and we've all been in that zone where we can capture it and it's flowing, but the tool of the Zettelkasten and the way that you use it really helps you dial in what that voice sounds like, both in your head and then, when you're sharing the thought in writing with someone else. That was, I've written in some fashion or other my whole life, everything for magazines to newsletters to classes, whatever. I really thought I knew my writer's voice like cold, but having the Zettelkasten really helped me develop it. So I don't have to wait for the muse or the inspiration or any of the ooey gooey stuff to show up. I can drop right into that voice and I can talk to my people because I know who I am and I know who they are. That was huge for me.
Mm. Mm.
And I'd like to add to Mill's post a remark about his book, Turning the Page, by Mel Jeffcoat. And it's available at meljeffcoat.com. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And this book will not only get you going on reading old books, but he also has a very nice synopsis on how to actually get your Zettelkasten started. So if you're looking for a brief introduction to, how to get off the ground, Mel has it here, and some excellent ways of interacting with old books. And oh man, his newsletter is just mind-blowing. So
Well, thank you for the plug, Kathleen.
I'm so glad that you started your Zettelkasten and did your writing, because I'm learning so much from you. I really appreciate it.
Well, that goes both ways.
So I wrote less on this one, but I have more to say. But I won't go on a long time. I just wrote basically 4 ways in which having a Zettelkasten has changed my life. Clarity, enhanced creativity, longevity of ideas, and friendships. I'll start with that last one first. We are here together because we're friends, and we're friends because we joined lilypub.org. Well, two of us formed lilypub.org, and the rest of us joined it. And a common thread that we share is enthusiasm for using our Zettelkastens, and we are individual people, and we use them in different ways and constantly learning from each other. And that's just, it's fun. It's it's frankly very pleasant to discuss ideas with people who engage with ideas in this way. They're not ephemeral. And they're not ephemeral because the Zettelkasten helps them not be ephemeral. And I relate so much to what Deb was saying about, yeah, I wrote it down. Who knows if I'm going to find it again? And I mean, just having the practice of, you could have 1,000,000 journals around as long as you number them and you know how to keep a bib card in there, and occasionally make some cards out of that. That one was really good. I'm going to put that in the main system. You know that you're feeding the idea machine. And so in terms of clarity and I would say enhanced creativity, they kind of go together. The clarity, it starts from knowing where to put stuff. It's just great to not have to be dithering about that. I now know, oh, that belongs on a card, and it belongs as a main card, and there needs to be an index for it. I know what needs to happen, and I don't need, now, will I make myself do it? That's a completely different thing. Discipline, I didn't say it creates discipline. It creates the desire for it. But the clarity, there's a whole lot of debate about what should I do with this that's kind of answered already. And it's simple. And then going down a level deeper, as Mel invites us to do, it's also because you're fitting the card you're fitting the ideas in a certain limited space. And we have some guidelines around, well, there's the idea. What else you need to put with the idea so that you can find where you thought of that. What does it mean to you? And be able to call that idea up in its essence from having executed the little bit of discipline to create one line across the top that says it all. And indexing that's really, once you've done that once, you realize, that's not such a big deal. That's pretty easy. It takes time, but it's worth the time because it creates the space where you're encountering all your ideas that you have treasured over the days and weeks and years, and you can encounter them, and those encounters are not happenstance.
Right, they're around the conference table.
Yeah, it's exactly. And there's a seat for every kind of idea there.
Right.
And they start to learn how to speak for themselves. So the enhanced creativity really comes as a consequence of all that, because you've reduced your cognitive load so much. Inspiration just comes. The connections just come. And so yeah, it's changed my life in that it's reduced all of that dithering, and also I would say beating myself up about it too. As well, I had all these great ideas, nothing happened from them. Well, this gives them more of a chance.
So true. So true. Just removing the friction barrier of trying to find things when, let's say, you want to write something or you're working on something, that alone is enough to derail an entire project. Because if you don't know where to find things, you can waste time on either end of that, searching and hunting and trying to find, or not knowing, where does this fit in? Where do I save this? Should I put it here? Should I put it in a notebook? That whole process of, like you said, dithering around with information can take all of your creative time and leave you with nothing.
Very true. Very true. I should probably share the way my life has changed. When I started working on my Zettelkasten, I was approaching 75 years old. I was 74 and still working full time, and really somewhat afraid of backing off from my full-time work because I wouldn't know who I was or what I was going to do with myself. And I didn't want to get stuck, sitting in a rocking chair crocheting doilies. And not to say anything bad about people crocheting doilies. I have some hand crochet doilies that I did myself. So I would be putting myself down in the same boat. So I'm not really putting that down. It's just not something that I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I could just see myself shrinking. And starting out at under 5 foot tall, you really don't want to do much shrinking. You feel like Alice in Wonderland having drank the wrong potion. On the wrong side of the mushroom. So consequently, I started my Zettelkasten on a fluke from my brother, who sent me down a path researching it. And I thought, oh, here's my answer. I'm going to finally do a real deep study of linguistics, because that's what I've always wanted to study. Don't know a thing about it, but I've been fascinated by it. And I'll have the time and I'll do it. Well, I never ended up studying linguistics. I have probably fewer than 20 cards in my Zettelkasten on linguistics, because it went off on its own direction.
Right.
And took me with it. So now I've written one book. I've got another one coming out. I do a podcast on the Zettelkasten. I teach along with Victoria. Together we teach a class on fusion writing for would-be writers. And we formed LilyPub together as a way to bring writers together and readers and people who are just fascinated with the Zettelkasten. And Mel came and joined us. And so he hosts his group there as well. And it's just, as Julianne said, the one that she ended her list with was friendships. And here we are, and the number of friendships that I've found through having the Zettelkasten and through LilyPub has just been through the moon. So with that, since I've said so much about LilyPub, I should give you the address. It's lilypub.org. And we're always welcoming new members. Thank you all. Does anyone have any final words they want to add to wrap up our topic, or some other theme of Zettelkasten that I didn't think to ask about that you're just brimming with wanting to share?
I will add. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say.
I keep fighting the oh, but it takes so long, demon. Literally nobody has said that to me yet. I am fighting imaginary dragons, but yeah, I know I'm going to hear it because the digital stuff is so much there, and the analogy that I think of is ceremonies. So there are lots of ceremonies, and marriage ceremonies is one. And there's kind of a template that most cultures have for how do we do wedding ceremonies. And the actual exchange of vows is the briefest part of it all. And to me, the idea of doing the Zettelkasten a digital in a purely digital way, or trying to accomplish this purely digitally. It reminds me of The Princess Bride, where Prince Humperdinck is just saying, man and wife, man and wife.
Right.
Just give me it. Whereas cultivating it is part of what the ceremony is about. It's about creating a new life, and the new lives that are created each time you sit down with your Zettelcast and you do these things that are a little slower, is you're creating a space for insights to be born, or ideas to marry each other and birth an insight, to overwork the metaphor. But the ceremonies, you don't have to think of what has to happen, but every marriage ceremony is different. And that's true of every Zettelkasten too. It's really true of every time you sit down with your own Zettelkasten. You're doing the same thing and you get different results.
And that's the part of the surprise element.
Yeah.
And if we go back to Lumen, that's proof, according to Lumen, that we have a communication partner.
So true. I was going to add that for me, I think we all walk around with a sense of, how smart we are. I mean, we know that we can show up, we can get things done. We all have this sense of ourselves. After I started working with mine, I don't know, a good 6 months, I was all in and I was really starting to harness what it could do. And then certainly when I started writing my Zettelkasten for Fiction writer's book, all of a sudden I had a feeling of, I knew I was this smart. I knew I was this good. I just couldn't get there without the tool. And that's one of the most profound differences in the most simple terms, is I knew I was better than the level that I was operating at, but I only had the tools to operate with that I had at the time. When I added this tool, then all of a sudden, it really was a profound shift, because I could say, I knew I was better than that. I just didn't have the right tools.
Your genius was liberated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I like to think of it as my brain on roller skates, which is my new shorthand.
And now I've got a mental image that can really fit in my mental image challenged brain.
I love it.
That stick figure on roller skates fits.
That's fantastic. My brain on roller skates.
Little dudes with drawers coming out their heads.
Right? Seriously. Well, it's ridiculous how accurate it is. I mean, that's sometimes what you feel like, is like, oh, I just need to open this drawer over here.
But it is like having your drawer in your brain too, because you'll be putting two cards together and they're making an interesting insight, and you'll remember that other card that you haven't even pulled, and it'll come back.
So true.
Well, thank you all so much. Anybody have any last word?
Just
Okay.
the importance of a tagline. That's what I was thinking, the tagline, because taking the time to create that tagline is the thing that grows the roots. It grows the roots, and the roots are that's what sinks down into the, I don't know, our cells and makes it grow. Those taglines are critical, and you don't do that in digital. That's not really part of it, but it's an intricate part of the AZaK. So, yeah, that was all I wanted to add.
So the tagline is the proper word for the line at the top of the card that I was talking about, the thing that, and I
Okay.
think Kathleen, is this your innovation, the use of a tagline?
Well, a tagline is, in general, has a general meaning. I
Sure.
just applied that meaning to that line.
Yeah, but even using that line in
I think
in
that's
the
something
Zettel,
that I haven't seen it elsewhere, but I'm not a researcher of the Zettelcast, and I just share what I do. So
yeah,
I cannot guarantee that I did not that I did not independently discover it, and somebody else might have discovered it ahead of me. I
yeah,
cannot make that claim.
yeah. But the tagline and the requirements for the tagline, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Deb. I mean, that was a rocket ship for me, where you just using titles, as you know, you've used the word, Kathleen, you call them dead. They're absolutely dead. And it's like where ideas go to die is underneath cards with titles.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I see it every day in my index box because I started out with just titles and categories, and I look down those cards. No card ever wants to join a conversation with a title line. That's why I say they're dead. So
Mm.
gradually, I'm getting rid of all of my categories and replacing them. I use a little symbol, an E with a circle around it, and keep the old one. I think it was you, Julianne, who suggested, or Dad, that I keep the old card as well. And I'm making a new foundation card to replace it that has a real tagline and a real thought and a real reaction. And those do interact.
Yeah.
Kind of rooting out the dead wood.
Mm.
Yeah, they're the ones who sit around the conference table, right? Okay,
Yeah, we don't want anyone that's just a label on the drawer.
right. No.
No seat on the counter. What are you gonna bring? A file folder and plunk it down on a chair?
Here's a good question. Has anyone experienced a shift in your, we talked a little bit about resistance, but a shift in your anxiety or stress or worry about writing because of your Zettelkasten? Because for me, that's another profound change. I have a sense of calm around approaching my writing projects that I didn't have before. And usually it was my brain on roller skates. It was all this stuff running around up here, you know, and I wake up at 4 a.m. and I jot down some notes because I don't want to forget something. And the whole process was kind of frantic and disjointed. And I think that's why I had such trouble getting that first book done. Because every time I came to the project, it was, oh, I have to remember this and that, you know, your brain's just in a hamster wheel. And now, once you go through the exercise of properly setting up and developing your Zettelkasten, it takes all of that frantic motion out of your thought processes and just brings you down to this level of calm, kind of confidence that you know everything is over there in that box. And all I need is an index and I'm good to go. I'm going to be fine. It's in the box. That was huge for me too. Just a sense of calm that it brings to your workflow.
Can't speak to that because I never, well, I did write. In my youth, I wrote 2 books in the computer realm in the early days of the microcomputer. But I hadn't written anything for decades, and I did not write my first of the 2 books until my Zettelkasten was well developed and it begged to be written. So the Zettelkasten pushed me into writing. And Scott
Yeah.
Scheffer jumped to it as well. I have to be honest there, that's for sure. But so I didn't have the compare and contrast.
Mm.
I can say that I don't feel an anxiety towards it.
It can
Awesome.
also push you toward your life's purpose, if you will. You know, there was something that I think it was Julianne who said that she didn't even know, and this has nothing to do with life's purpose, but it has something to do with finding out what you're really interested in, which is a kind of the same road as life purpose. it's the same road. But it was talking about, I think it was spirituality,
Metaphysics.
metaphysics. Okay,
Yeah.
metaphysics. Not realizing that she was as interested in it as she is. That was demonstrated by all the cards that she found in the ZK, you know, the AZK. So there's so many benefits, so many benefits. I wish there was a magic wand that I could just wave around and make it so that this was a part of every child's experience. You grow up with this.
Right?
You grow up with this. I mean, imagine what it would be like to start something like this at, I don't know, 3, 4, 5. And now, like me, 77, what a treasure you would have. You know, I mean, and plus you would be so secure in who you are, because you would have had these conversations back and forth with yourself. And you would have revealed yourself to yourself in a way that you could say, oh, yeah, I know you. You know, I know you. And we can do X, Y, Z. It's not about and being all afraid, because you will have proof positive that you can do X, Y, Z, because you have done it and you've shared it and you've gotten feedback. Marvelous thing. Thank you, Mr. Loman. Okay.
Here, here.
Well, since we've reached the end of our show and we've already invited everyone to lilypub.org, it's time to find out who is going to lead us next week.
Suspect that it is
I
my
think
turn.
it's about-
So
Is it your turn? Okay, you do next week and I'll do the following.
sounds good.
All right. So we got that lined up.
Excellent. And Kathleen, you can be thinking of a title for this one.
Okay, I will. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording. Bye.